Hi, and welcome. This video is for anyone who has ever told themselves or been told, I'm just not a math person. I want to share some rather incredible knowledge with you on how to unlock your natural math genius. And I am going to propose the idea that you were born a genius and that it has been proven fairly beyond a shadow of a doubt by some very impressive researchers. And more importantly, how to unlock these natural abilities you were born with, that we're all born with, but very few are taught to develop. Okay, so let's get into it here. Uh, the basic premise of this presentation is going to be you have been brainwashed to think and feel very strongly using very effective methods that you are so much less than what you actually are. And here is how to escape the brainwashing and unlock your natural math genius. I know I've repeated myself a few times, but well, they say mother is the repetition of all learning. I think that's a little backwards. Repetition is the mother of learning. And also, I don't think you're going to believe me out of the gate. I think this is going to take some convincing. So this is the structure. This is going to follow the state of affairs for math education and knowledge. You're definitely not alone if you struggle with math right now. The proof that you were born a genius, the proof and kind of the how and why for of how you were brainwashed to think, act, and feel as though you were stupid, for lack of a better word. That's how we're taught to feel in school. And it was not an accident. It's very specifically designed that way. Whether or not that's the intention of any specific educator, I don't believe that's the case. I believe teachers and most of the people that work in the school system are dedicated. I think, like John Taylor Gatto thought, it's the structure of education that's the problem. And in any case, how these experiences create what's called the self-image that keeps you trapped. Your self-image acts like a governor on what you can and can't do, but really only if you believe it on a conscious or subconscious level. And then three steps I've identified by working with a number of students over the past year since I started my business, Steam Engine Solution, and three steps you can take to unlock the brainwashing. Okay, so let's look at it. First of all, what is the state of affairs right now with math? Well, in the United States, where I'm from, it's not looking good. There are statistics and headlines I could list for days and days, but these are the ones that stood out to me for the purpose of this talk. Approximately 34% of US adults, about 72 million people, now score at or below level 1 in numeracy. And to give you an idea, level 1 is single step math. Okay? I'm adding two figures. I'm subtracting two figures. I am multiplying two figures. Anything more than that, if it's more than one step to get to your answer, or you have to use any lines of reasoning longer than just one single step of logic, that's higher than level 1. And there is a sizable portion of our population that's scoring, you can see, at or below level 1. Only 9% of adults are considered truly proficient, level 4 or 5 math. And by the way, level 4 or 5 doesn't necessarily mean you finished the calculus series in college, or you're doing linear algebra, or studying some of the higher math that scientists and engineers use. Level 4 or 5 isn't that. It tops out pretty much at algebra. And can you use algebraic thinking to build models to solve real world problems? And only 9% of the population can do that, less than 1 in 10 people. I mean, yikes. So 2024 to 2025 literacy and numeracy studies show that 54% of adults, so more than half of the population, perform math and reading tasks at a level below sixth grade proficiency. And so what's interesting here is that sixth grade, you figure 12, 13 years old, somewhere in that range, right? Some students do it earlier, some later, but in that age range is where most people stop developing mathematically. Which is a problem because in today's world, most of the problems society is facing require a deeper understanding of math to even step up to the table and talk about. So when we have damn near all the population unable to even understand the problems being presented to us, how can we meaningfully vote even? Right? How do we vote on policy or vote people into office if we don't even have we as a people, right, as a whole group, if we don't even have the structure in our minds to comprehend the problems that are being discussed. This is a thing. And what I'm here to tell you with Steam Engine Solution, my business, is dedicated to, I shouldn't say business, it's really a mission. My mission is to help you unlock your natural match genius. It's so much simpler and easier than you might think. I know that sounds unbelievable. I know so many people out there grew up having migraines when they had to do algebra homework because they're just so tired of feeling like crap about themselves. It's so frustrating or confusing, or you've been shamed by your teacher in front of the class, or people laughed at you and you got the answer wrong. We'll go into that more later, okay? But this is a problem. So students who do not pass Algebra 2, that's like basic college level, kind of intermediate, right? Right in between high school and college. It's kind of this vague area sometimes with Algebra 2. But if you don't pass it, you're 4 times less likely to ever finish a degree of any kind. There's this gatekeeping effect to mathematics, and it's reflected here. Over 80% of community college students who fail to earn a degree cite developmental math as their primary hurdle. So 8 out of 10, right? 4 out of 5 are saying that was the reason. And this one is really shocking. At major public universities like UC San Diego, so, competitive four-year universities, maybe not Ivy League, but it's competitive. The number of incoming freshmen requiring remedial math instruction spiked 30-fold. It not goes up 30%, 30x, 30 times the number between 2021 and 2025. And so the message I want to give you is things are dire right now. It's bad, but it doesn't have to be. And the solution is simpler than you might think. And it's delightful to learn that you were born a genius. This is a cartoon of a man named Glenn Doman. And Glenn Doman was working with special needs, traumatic brain injuries, infants and young children who started life with a massive disadvantage. And through his experimentation with what methods actually engage these children, he found ways not only to teach young babies to read. You can teach babies as young as 2 and 3 to sight read. It's incredible. This is a real thing. Uh, he was at this for 50 years. He helped more than 25,000 families, and he would help special needs children outperform the gifted children with no special needs from other schools. And so after his 50-year career, 25,000 plus families, his conclusion was that he believed every child, mind you, in his world, every child means traumatic brain injury, special needs, autism, you name it, right? So when he says every child, he means every child at the moment of birth has a greater potential intelligence than Leonardo da Vinci ever used. Now, this is going to be important. Leonardo da Vinci. Why, of all the Renaissance figures, did he choose Leonardo da Vinci? Well, because A, he was a polymath. He contributed to anatomy, hydrodynamics, aerodynamics, I want to say, maybe. I can't remember right now. But he wasn't just an artist. Leonardo da Vinci contributed significant knowledge to humanity in many different fields. And he was able to explore all these different things. And Glenn Doman he believed through experience, right? This isn't just something he's cooking up, from his observations, from real life results, working with these families. He believed every child has a greater potential intelligence. So we could, if we do things right, have everyone performing at Renaissance level or above. That's what he really believed, and I believe it too. And part of the reason I believe that is because of this man's work. So this is a cartoon of George Land. And George Land said the school system was designed to produce good workers. We'll explore that more in a minute, not good thinkers. It teaches us to find one right answer, but life requires us to find many possible answers. So George Land has a very interesting story. During the Cold War in 1968, arguably the most important front of the Cold War at that time was the space race, right? The United States wanted to prove with the space race, in sort of an indirect but in everyone's face way, that our way of life, economic, social, and government, did I say that right? Civic way of life, we're superior to the commies, right? That was the thinking. So imagine NASA with all of its resources back then. I mean, they had all the funding they could ever hope for. It was unlimited, right within the bounds of reality. With all those resources, NASA found George Land and his research partner, Beth Jarman. They were commissioned to design a predictive test to sort out, to find what are called divergent thinkers, creative geniuses, people who can innovate, the best innovators we had in our society, to make sure that we had every chance of dominance, of achieving dominance with the space race. And the test was a smashing success. It was extremely predictive, very well designed test. Got the results. And it identified what are called divergent thinkers. So in George Land's model, we have convergence and divergence. Convergence is when you are judging and evaluating, sifting the wheat from the chaff. Divergent thinking is like daydreaming or dreaming at night or exploring the possibilities, asking what if, right? Playing, letting your imagination go wild. Well, because their test was so predictive with the engineers and the staff at NASA, they started to wonder, well, where does creative thinking start? They got curious about the origins of it along the human lifespan. And so they decided to give this test to 1,600 children enrolled in the Head Start program. And he was absolutely amazed to discover that 98%, okay, so statistically speaking, basically everyone at the 4 to 5 year old age range scored at the creative genius level on this same test. They had been hired by NASA to find the absolute best and brightest in our society to help with the absolute most important mission in the world, as far as we were concerned. I mean, this is important. He gave this TED talk. So these are screenshots of a TED talk he has on YouTube called The Failure of Success. It's been out for years. Um, and his work started a long time ago. You can see 1968. It's sort of baffling to me that the system of education we have is where it is, given that this knowledge has been out for so long. What the hell are we doing? But what he found, they turned this into a longitudinal study because the results were so impressive. 5 years later, it turns out that 10-year-olds do worse on this test than the 4 to 5 year olds. In fact, it drops by 68%. You can see it moves from 98 here to 30. 5 years after that, at 15 years old, so now we're talking about late freshman, early sophomore, 12%. And by the time you reach age 31 as an adult, only 2%. Complete figure ground reversal. Look at this. 2 is the complement of 98 to make 100%. Right? I imagine a gestalt. This is complete figure ground reversal. Only 2% of adults can do the same thing that 4 to 5 year olds do naturally. And if you ask me, once you discover the reason that this is true, like what is school doing to our children that is robbing them of their potential in this particular way? The reason for it is convergent thinking. So judging, evaluating, criticizing at the same time when you should be learning, generating, daydreaming, right? Generating ideas. It's like trying to drive with the gas and the brake on at the same time. And look, this is how we unlearn divergent thinking. What George Land found is how society goes from everyone's a creative genius to basically no one is this. Look at this self-talk. That doesn't fit our policy. You can't do that. That's a dumb idea. We already tried that. Isn't it practical? We've never tried that. Negative attitude and impatience. You can see, look, all of this, where do we get this? We all know where we got it. We got it in school when you make a mistake, you get a red mark. When the teacher is the expert doling out information to the students who are learning, there's one right answer to a problem, and your mission is to think like the teacher wants you to think. And there's so much more to it. We'll get into that in a moment. But this is the structure of how this happens. This is why you feel like you're just not a math person. This is why if you head over to the 74 million, most students say they're not math people, RAND survey finds. As most people think this way. And it's simply not true. Okay, it's simply not true. It is an accident of the structure of our education system. And what's interesting, though, is that George Land said you have the possibility of being back in that 98% tomorrow, and I'm serious about that. So he was able to find, he designed a couple of exercises and experimented with people. You can unlearn those bad habits in a day if you understand what creates them. And I'm going to go into a very powerful way to do that, okay? But first, I want you to understand something. If you survived compulsory school, whether private, public, or whatever, if the structure of your learning in your life was teacher is right, We students are wrong. Our mission is to learn what teacher wants. And you did it in a little box that rotated what you were learning hour by hour with bells and all that, right? If that's your experience, you have been literally brainwashed to think, act, and feel as though you were stupid. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and usually with a healthy dose of shame, and it was not an accident. This is a cartoon of a man named John Taylor Gatto. He is the author of The Underground History of American Education, which I believe is his magnum opus. I think that is the book to read if you're interested in this. He wrote Weapons of Mass Instruction, is another good one, and Dumbing Us Down. It was a good book. It's an expansion on an essay he wrote, a seven-part essay. But John Taylor Gatto was an award-winning teacher in New York. And he spent the latter half of his life retired from teaching because he knew from experience, and he taught in elite schools in New York and he taught in schools in the ghetto. He'd done it all for 30 years plus. He knew that he was hurting, being part of this system was hurting the kids he wanted to help more than it was helping them. And so he spent the latter half of his life evangelizing these truths that he had found. And he wrote a seven-part essay. I'll go over it quickly here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. These books are very worth checking out. But just to give you an idea, there is a very specific structure that Horace Mann and all of the Prussian influences that our school system was taken from formulated to create a very obedient citizen in society. That was the idea. Obedient workers for industry. Okay, school is not designed. It has never been designed, the structure of it. I'm not saying, please hear me, I'm not saying that educators, that teachers are the problem. Most of my friends who became teachers and most teachers I've encountered, most school admins are dedicated professionals who really care about their kids. It is the structure of the education system itself that makes it a mission impossible to get the potential out of the children. Okay, and these are kind of the seven ways that this happens. So confusion. This is the secret curriculum that John Taylor Gatto says every school teaches. Confusion, the fragmentation of pattern seeking. School teaches the unrelating of everything and infinite fragmentation by breaking knowledge into disconnected, out of context facts. It prevents students from developing genuine enthusiasm and deep coherence required for creative mastery. So, if you have ever studied anything on your own that you're passionate about, you know it's very natural to get obsessed. Humans love learning. When we're interested in something, we love exploring. It's very natural to us. But what happens is you're forced to learn something you're not interested in on your timeline, and it's done in a way that we're going to study for an hour and then break. And also, by the way, we're going to introduce you to things. We're not going to tell you why we're introducing them to you or what is the big picture. It's just here's the assignment, do it this way. If you don't, you get a red mark. And if you ask, if you ask the wrong question, you get made fun of. It's a mess. Then you have things like class position, which is like the hierarchical nature of the class. The students who score the highest are better than the students who score lower, even though the process of testing. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have standards or any of that, but that's one extreme. We're too far the other way. We're so obsessed with the measurement of evaluating our students and tying up their self-esteem and their performance that they very rarely get the chance to just explore, which is necessary for real deep learning. Okay, and I will link to his essay where he writes all these, but this is taking up a lot of time out of the video. I want to keep it flowing. But just understand there is a structure to school that robs you of your natural abilities. It really does. And we're going to explore how here. But at the end of his career, John Taylor Gatto said this. He said, I've concluded that genius is as common as dirt. We suppress genius because we haven't yet figured out how to manage a population of educated men and women. The solution, I think, is simple and glorious. Let them manage themselves. So his idea was just get the hell out of the way. Humans are naturally brilliant, and school should be more like a system of support to let the student be their own teacher and to give a real community. You can read more about his ideas in those books, but I want to paint a picture for you. It'll probably be familiar for a lot of you if you've had trouble with math, okay? So imagine this. It's a sunny day in a classroom somewhere in middle America, right? Just pick your favorite state. You're trying to stay invisible in the back of the classroom because you're confused about the math problem the teacher is working through. And then you are struck with horror as you notice the teacher's eyes are burning through you like a laser. You were trying to stay hidden. He's looking right at you. The teacher calls your name and says, because you look distracted and you haven't been engaged again, why don't you come to the board, grab some chalk, and show everyone how to solve this problem? So this is an example of these experiences that people carry their whole lives. And I know because I've talked to a number of students. I had a student in her 50s who still remembered this from being 11 years old, being made to do long division in front of the class, being made to look like a fool. You know, when teachers lose their patience or when teachers can be nasty, they're not always at their best, right? Who of us is? But when teachers do it, there's a special kind of injury done, a psychic injury done to the self-image of the student that can stick with you a lifetime. And this, I'm going to go into the structure of why does this memory stick? Well, you might feel, right, if you have to go up in front of the class, you're going to feel your face goes hot. You feel your hands sweating. Do you hear your ears ringing? Is that your ears ringing? Do you hear? And as you notice the cascade of sensations from the embarrassment and the dread swarming through your body, you take one impossible step after another toward the front of the class after somehow getting to your feet with an awkward scoot of your chair. You know that feeling when all the eyes are on you and you're so afraid you might do something to embarrass yourself? It feels like there's weights on your feet. Like literally you're walking through jello, like, oh God, you can't even move. And then you try to scoot out smoothly, but you're so tense, right? Maybe it's an awkward scoot out of the chair, miserable. So somehow you get to the board, you pick up the chalk, but your grip is weak because you feel that nervous jolt running through your midsection with every motion to write because you're afraid of messing something up or your handwriting being judged or any of the 1,000 ways kids can be mean or teachers. But you can already tell by your teacher's crossed arms and tense voice, you're off to a bad start. You're in fear. You can feel the weight of every pair of eyes in the classroom as your stomach turns over, seemingly playing double Dutch jump rope with all the knots compounding. Your voice is tight and hesitant, a squeak really, as you finish writing and ask, is that right? It's a miracle you could write at all. It feels like a miracle you could hold the damn chalk. And you can't quite make eye contact with the teacher. You just can't bring yourself to cross that bridge, but you don't have to. Already you hear, almost violently, are you kidding me? Are you serious right now? Look at the problem. How many times have we seen that done? Has it been done to us? It is those kinds of very vivid, deeply emotional experiences. That's why I have these covers of these books. So, Moonwalking with Einstein and Memory Craft. These are two of my favorite memory books. Probably I should have put in Quantum Memory by Dominic O'Brien too. That's the one I've used the most. But if you study memory athletes and how memory works, you learn that your brain is designed to remember certain things. We're really good naturally at remembering faces, at remembering locations. That's why you can remember every house you grew up in, all the rooms and stuff. And we're also very good at remembering novelty, things that are ridiculous, and emotional content. So if something has a deeply emotional impact on you, that's why, like, I have this dream from when I was 5 years old. My kids laugh hilariously at me, but still to this day, it feels scary when I remember it. I had this dream once. Okay, this was not a recurring dream. In the dream, my great grandfather is sitting on the couch and he has this like wicked look on his face and he reaches down and pulls up the skin on his shin and underneath his skin there's mustard and I hated mustard as a kid. I love it now, I don't know, but at the time he pulls it and there's mustard in his shin and at the same time there's this chicken pillow that comes to life and is going to murder everyone in the house. I know that sounds ridiculous. This is my kids laugh at me for it. But in that dream, I was completely convinced that that chicken was going to murder us at all. I remember us calling 911 and talking with dispatch about this chicken pillow. Those things you remember, okay? The ridiculous, the emotional. And when you have an emotional experience like this, where you're made to feel stupid, less than, ashamed, not like the other kids who can keep up, this puts you at such a massive disadvantage. And look, if 98% of the world treated correctly, treated compassionately, given the chance, could be Leonardo da Vinci's, then as I see it, this is the most important problem in society because we are sitting on a pot of gold, doing nothing with it. We have this vast amount of human capital in the form of our creative brilliance that's just sitting there untapped. If we could tap into that and work together, we could solve What problem couldn't we solve that's facing society right now? And so I'm deeply passionate about this mission and helping to fix this. This is a cartoon of Maxwell Maltz. He's the author of this famous book, Psycho-Cybernetics. It's all about self-image. And he said the self-image sets the boundaries of of individual accomplishment. It defines what you can and cannot do. Expand the self-image and you expand the area of the possible. The development of an adequate, realistic self-image will seem to imbue the individual with new capabilities, new talents, and literally turn failure into success. That's the power of how you see yourself. It can open or close doors of possibility. Now, Psycho-Cybernetics is a great book, and I do think there is so much value in things like writing affirmations, doing visualization. Um, Vishen Lakhani has done great things at Mind Valley, teaching people the Silva method and just getting people to use their imagination to create a new life, right? Because it's our imagination that created our old life, that gives us all of our daily problems, these things we ruminate on. Why not use it in a better direction? I'm all for that. However, something I've discovered in my life that really helped me help students and help myself more is if you put the burden on yourself of having to come up with a new self image, one thing is sometimes you don't really believe it. Sometimes it's so different than what you really deep down believe that you are that the mind rejects it, or you'll find subconsciously you kind of sabotage your efforts. And the other thing is, because you have lived the life you've lived so far, it's not always clear what a realistic self image is. I can't predict the future. If this has been my past, how do I know I can do better? And what is that going to look like? It's not always clear. And so, what I like to start with, and what I like to start students with, is not creating a new self image. It's simply destroying the old one that's keeping you trapped. Now, how do we do that? How do we destroy an inadequate self image? How do we, because what I imagine is it's like a prison. How do I break the prison so the light can get through and I can breathe fresh air? Well, I think the person who has the best answer for that is this Dr. Ellen Langer, the mother of mindfulness, a researcher at Harvard. She says we confuse the stability of our mindsets with the stability of the world around us. And what she means very simply is mindfulness, as she defines it, is noticing new things. Because our brain, like the way Alfred Korzybski put it, the map is not the territory, or Alan Watts, my favorite philosopher, he says you can't eat the menu, right? You go to the restaurant, you look at the menu, you choose what's on the menu, but the menu is not the food. It's a symbol for the food. But so many people are living their lives in a way that is like eating the menu. They really believe that the world is the way they think about it, not understanding that your thoughts are just symbols for the real world. The real world is not static. It's not stable like you think about it. It is always shifting and changing. And chances are, most of the time, most of us aren't here to know we're not here, right? We're not being mindful in this moment. We are just dealing in the world of crystal abstractions, thoughts. And so we're out of touch with reality. And so if you want to get over your self-image, if you've had a hard time with math, the best way to get out of that to start is not to imagine yourself great at math. I mean, if you can, wonderful. It's to question whether or not your beliefs are true, because probably they're not. And so Ellen Langer says the more we realize that most of our views of ourselves, of others, and of presumed limits regarding our talents, our health, and our happiness were mindlessly accepted by us at an earlier time in our lives, the more we open up to the realization that these too can change. And all we need to do to begin the process is to be mindful or notice new things, embrace uncertainty. So one of the ways she communicates this is to say, when she addresses a crowd or she's on a podcast, she'll say, what is one plus one? Which I think is appropriate for a math channel, right? And you say two. We've all been trained to think, oh, one plus one is two. That's a fact. It's just an unchanging fact. Well, she suggests not always. If you look at coalescence, one drop of water close to another drop of water merge to become one drop of water. Now, you could troll and say, well, the mass of the two combined is going, right? The mass hasn't changed. In a sense, 1 plus 1 is 2 because it's more than you started with in each individual measure. Oh, fair enough. We could move to a more technical example talking about different base number systems. You could say, well, in a base 10 system, 1 plus 1 equals 2. In binary, in base 2, 1 plus 1 looks like 10. Or another number example, we'll scroll down here. Is this a 6 or a 9? Well, it depends where you stand. And that's her idea is that any fact you can say out loud. A fact, by definition, presupposes one point of view. But in the real world, there's not just one point of view. There are many points of view. Is this a 6 or is it a 9? It depends which side you stand on. Both of these individuals are correct. And that's the point, is that things aren't like you think about them from every point of view. And so she did something really wonderful with symptom variability by asking people to notice what was happening right now. She took patients, pregnant women, Parkinson's, stroke, multiple sclerosis, arthritis, serious medical conditions going on. She would call them randomly. Her and her team would call them randomly throughout the day at different times and ask, how do you feel right now? Because people with these chronic conditions tend to believe, because they talk about it a certain way, that they're in pain all the time. Well, nobody's anything all the time. And by mindfully checking in, they started to notice, my God, there are times in the day when I don't hurt as much. And if you can figure out why, that's even better. Maybe there's a change in your environment. Maybe it's something you were eating. Maybe it's something you were thinking about. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep. But by mindfully checking in, that in itself is good for your health. It turns on the circuitry. You're engaging here and now. And also, it puts you in a better position to discover what the hell's going on. Which brings us to this gentleman, Edward de Bono, who was he's a proponent of creative thinking, great divergent thinker. He's the author of Six Red Hats. That's why I have this red hat cartoon here with him and like the cosmos behind him, because I just think he's one of the greatest thinkers. You have to watch his TED Talk called How to Have a Beautiful Mind. It is brilliant. But I wanted to bring him into this part of the conversation because he has a very interesting quote. He found that 90% of error in thinking is due to error in perception. So Ellen Langer is saying most of us are mindless most of the time, and what that creates a scenario where so many of us are seldom in doubt. We think we know, and so that we're often in error. So we're wrong most of the time. And Edward de Bono is shedding a little bit of light on why. 90% of error in thinking is due to error in perception. If you can change your perception, you can change your emotion, and this can lead to new ideas. So I want to give you one more thing that will help you crack the hold to break out of these chains that your old self-image might have had on you. And it is this, your perception is most likely wrong most of the time. And it's great when we have these illusions. Like this is the checkerboard illusion. So A and B are both the same shade of gray. But because of this green cylinder casting a shadow this way, it looks like B is much lighter shade than A. In fact, they're the same color. Now you might have to look online so you can see, take a sample of both colors, dice this image up, might have to block something. Yeah, when I block it like this, I can see the corners are the same color. Still blows my mind, all these years later. But another one is this. If you look at these circles on the outer edge, so focus on these, but notice what happens to the circle in the center in your peripheral vision. It looks like it's changing size, right? In fact, it's not. This is a dynamic Ebbinghaus illusion. So I bring these two up as very visceral, immediate proof that your brain is lying to you all of the time. And this is just a simple visual illusion. Okay, there's just basic structures getting in the way of your perceiving what's true here. When you add emotional layers into that, imagine how many layers of distortion there are when you're considering something that has a lot of emotional content to it built up over years. Chances are you're so far away from the truth, it's ridiculous. So, okay, well, what do you do? Let's say you believe me so far. You're like, wow, maybe my ideas of myself don't have to trap me. Maybe I could explore math a different way. Maybe there is a potential. Maybe you're not sold that you're a creative genius just yet. We'll get to that. I want to give you the experience of this. It'll take, I'm sure, a few weeks or more experiments with my channel, but we'll get there. What do you do with all this new possibility? Well, the thing I recommend you do is leverage pattern recognition. So this is Ofer Breyer, and he came up with an absolutely brilliant way to train the brain to notice patterns and abstract them across different disciplines. This is a quote from his TED Talk, Talent Redefined. He said, tomorrow, talking about piano students he trained. They will know how to play six-note melodies, 5,000 melodies with zero mistakes, and they only practice 7 minutes of a lesson. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds hyperbolic. It's absolutely true. Go check out his TED Talk, and this is the structure of it, okay? He uses pattern recognition, pattern design, analogy, and real-time composition. So I'll tell you how this works. The experiment he did with his kids was this. He showed them three shapes. Now, this is the whole thing. Really, you should block off all but the top row to get the feeling the students had in these experiments. He would show them three shapes left to right and say, how many different ways can you order these? And these kids, seeing three shapes, would kind of fall into the assumption that, oh, there's three of them. And so there must be like a 3 times 3 matrix. It's probably nine. 3 times 3 is nine. That's wrong. But he would get any group of kids he could get to get the right answer if he introduced the pattern to their brain a different way. If he blocked off one of the shapes, so he just showed them square and circle. He said, okay, left to right, how many different ways can you order two shapes, a square and a circle? Well, that's easy enough, right? You just flip them. There's only two. If you did it again, you'd be repeating the pattern that just came above. So square, circle, circle, square. Now, once they figured that little piece of the puzzle out, once you gave them a little bit, now put the third shape back in and they see, oh, if I put one of the shapes at the beginning, I can flip the other two. Then if I switch the position and put the square at the beginning, I could flip these two. And if I put the circle at the beginning, I could flip these two. And now that's all the possibilities before it starts repeating. There are six. Well, then he would take this pattern that their brain was making sense of with shapes and colors and introduce it to their fingers on the piano. Play the notes, C, D, E. Then C, if you went C, D, E, you would say C, E, D. D, C, E, D, E, C. E, D, C, E, C, D, right? That would be the equivalent of this pattern. Three possibilities, and so there are six patterns before you repeat. Well, now take that same idea and play a long note, two shorts. Long, long, short. Long, long, long. Loud, soft, soft. Soft, loud, loud. So by introducing the pattern in these steps, once the brain understands it, piece by piece by piece, it starts to unlock an entire world of possibilities. And his greatest proof of that is his student Yaron Harmon, who was a 19-year-old basketball player who had injured his knee and whose father had hired Ofer Breyer to teach him piano. And the way he tells the story in one of his courses, which I have for my kids because I homeschool, is they didn't even start out with piano. He started talking to them about girls and life and, whatever a 19-year-old's into. And just very sly, he would have piano music on in the background while they talked. So then Yaron would get curious. And eventually the moment came when he said, could I learn to play piano like that? And Ofer said, oh, yeah, it'd be no big deal. You'd have to practice 1 minute a day, 1 minute per day, though. 1 minute per day. So that's easy enough, right? And that's called a Kaizen goal. We'll get into that in a minute. But 1 minute a day with these patterns, with these extremely high leverage patterns, right? So you're getting a lot of learning in that 1 minute, but it's a gentle 1 minute. It's a fun, interesting 1 minute, maybe turns into 2 minutes as he becomes more interested. And then 2 minutes becomes 4 minutes. And then once he really starts to enjoy it and enjoy exploring, it wasn't long before he was practicing 10 hours per day. In 3 years from his first lesson with Ofer, he was recognized as one of the top jazz pianists in the world. He won a competition. 3 years. And I think there's something to the 3 year mark specifically we're going to see in just a minute. But what if there were patterns like this that could unlock mathematics for you? And so that's what Vedic mathematics is it was developed by my teacher, Kenneth Williams. Tirthaji was an Indian scholar that, as far as we know, either discovered or invented Vedic mathematics, depending who you ask. Regardless, my teacher, Kenneth Williams from the UK, took that system and developed it over the last 30 plus years into something really special that covers so many branches of mathematics, a lot of higher math, calculus, differentials, transcendental equations, linear algebra. So much can be solved mentally in a single line. And it is like what Ofer Breyer is doing with these patterns, but for mathematics. And so I got certified to teach a system. I discovered it in 2010. I got certified last December, actually December 2024, to teach because this is my passion in life. But there's a danger here, okay? There's a danger, not just the fear of the old conditioning, right? All the reasons school made you feel like crap about yourself. That's one danger as you try to learn this system, is that you don't want to fall back into those old habits. But there's a more subtle danger, which is this. Imagine you push on a sponge and you then release the pressure, right? The sponge fills in toward the surface. If you have been suppressed your entire life, when you take off the chains and you introduce someone to this, there is the very real temptation to learn everything tomorrow, yesterday even, because it's so fascinating and it's so overwhelmingly awesome that, wow, I can be a math genius. Wow, I can do this. So that's a danger though, because if you get too ambitious, it still engages the amygdala. It's still your fight or flight circuitry going to be engaged, and you face burnout. You face really disappointing yourself when you have all this enthusiasm and you run into a snag. And so the way we handle this is we use something called Kaizen. Kaizen, I learned from Dr. Robert Maurer in this book, One Small Step Can Change Your Life. I've listened to this audiobook probably 100 times now, all the way through. But the idea is this, is that ridiculously small, steps so small people laugh in your face, is the way he puts it in the book. Doesn't look like it's going to get you there in this lifetime, is actually the most effective brain training we have to make very significant, long-lasting change. And here's why. Small steps bypass the brain's fear response. When you want to make a change, the amygdala, the part of the brain that handles fear, sees a big goal as a threat. But a small step is so tiny, the amygdala stays asleep, right? You don't trip the alarm. So your cortex, your thinking brain, can still work. So he has some stories in his book, like he would get people to take up the habit of flossing by just for the next 30 days, floss one tooth a night. They say, well, what's one tooth going to do for your dental health? It's like, that's not the point. The point is right now you're in a state where you don't have the habit. And so what you need is to pick up that silly string and floss one tooth. Do that for 30 days straight. At the end of that 30 days, you have the habit of picking up the string. It is not much at all to ask. It's a pretty comfortable transition to go from one tooth to two teeth, two teeth to four teeth, like that, right? Like babies grow by cell dividing in that exponential way. That's how the universe works, not linear, but exponential. And the best way to get somewhere exponentially is start very small where it's comfortable and you can handle it. He has a great story of one woman who lost like 30 plus pounds by starting exercise with 1 minute. You know, she's middle aged, she's stressed out, life's kicking her ass. So all she can commit to, standing in front of her TV for 1 minute a day, just standing. Because after that becomes a habit, or after a week or two, standing, it doesn't seem so bad. Seems pretty easy, actually, maybe just to walk in place. But think about the difference, right? On that exponential biological model of thinking, like cells dividing, the difference between sitting and standing is massive. It's the difference between 0 and 1, which is like, in theory, infinity. Binary, right? Either nothing or something. Now we have something. And then when you're walking in place, marching in place, the difference between that and jogging in place or jumping jacks is massive again. But it doesn't feel massive to you if you take these tiny steps. And so eventually she ended up running around her block and, real exercise. But it started with standing in place for 1 minute a day. That was the point of departure. And I just want to communicate the power of this to you, okay? It is extremely powerful. James Clear has this great book, Atomic Habits, and he talks about this equation where if you have 365 days of 1% improvement, at the end of that year, you're 38 times better than you were when you started. And how do you stop at 1%? You can't. So this is minimum, right? But it gets really magic when you continue 2, 3, 5 years. Look at this. At 2 years, 1% improvement every day means you're 1,400 times better than you were on day one. It's almost incomprehensible, unfathomable. Multiply your skill by 1,400. We'll look at 3 years. And so you can see this is what was going on with the R. and Harmon on the piano. 3 years of 1% improvement per day, and I'm sure many of those days were more than 1%. He ended up practicing 10 hours at a time, right? He loved it. So, I mean, good luck pulling him away from the piano once that fire was lit. 54,000 times, right? That's 53.9. Basically, 54,000 times better. And if you keep it up for 5 years, 77 million times better. Are you really going to get 77 million times better at anything? I don't know. How do you even measure that? I don't know. But the point is this, is that with 1% daily improvements, if you're consistent within 3 to 5 years, you are going to be operating at the edge of your potential from there on. I mean, real magic is happening. A few other examples I really like of this. William Osler, the father of modern medicine, co-founded Johns Hopkins University. He gave an amazing talk called The Way of Life at Yale University, And he said the secret to his success was not that he was particularly brilliant, not that he was particularly talented, but that he read this quote from Thomas Carlyle that it's not ours to see what is dimly at a distance, but just to handle what's clearly at hand. I'm not getting that quite right. But the idea is this: live in daytime compartments. Just focus on what you can control and you can see today. If you do that enough, like we saw from this math, the rest will take care of itself. Stephen Dunier, How to Achieve Your Most Ambitious Goals, another amazing TED Talk. He starts the talk by asking the audience if they think they could draw a portrait of Brad Pitt. And I don't want to get into copyright art issues with anything of Chuck Close, so I just did this AI generated art. Um, if you had to paint this tree, that might be overwhelming if you've never painted or drawn anything before. But what if you put a grid on it? You can see if we zoom in, that doesn't look too intimidating, right? Just to draw what's in this single square. I mean, give yourself a couple weeks even, right? How could you make that easy? And if you can do one square, you can do two squares. And if you can do two squares, you can do four squares, right? And so, like that. Highly recommend checking out. He could only focus as a kid for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and he said that never changed. So he just decided to go with it, and he went from a C student to an A plus student, right, straight A student in college by studying 5 minutes, going to shoot some hoops, studying 5 minutes, going to do something else. He just accepted who he was and took everything in small steps. He became a lead, like a hedge fund manager, one of the leading hedge fund managers in the world. He set a Guinness World Record. He learned how to fly a plane. He learned how to race cars. I mean, it's really inspiring talk. Can't recommend it enough. But that's the idea. In my three-part system at Steam Engine Solution, we use mindfulness to overcome how you're trapped in a self-image from the past. Say that's how we escape that trap. And so that way there's no burden. You don't have to come up with a perfect self-image. You don't have to do weeks, 21 days of affirmations or anything. You can solve this right now. Just in this moment, we're going to start questioning things. We're going to use pattern recognitions that you're not used to, secret patterns that unlock math, that automatically open your mind to the possibilities because I had no idea I could multiply and divide like that mentally with no calculator. This is incredible. And you use Kaizen to manage the daily practice so it doesn't get overwhelming or engage your fear circuitry, right? And so now I want to prove to you that Glenn Doman was correct. Everyone has the potential to surpass Leonardo da Vinci in usable intelligence, and maybe even after birth, maybe even after that 0 to 6 year old window, that magic window when the brain is at its best. Maybe we can do this as adults. So in this book, The Art of More by Michael Brooks, one of my TikTok followers recommended me this great book. I want to read this to you because fractions are a big point of contention. So now we're going to do a demo. I'm going to teach you something about fractions that will have you feeling like a little bit of math magic, okay? If you found fractions distressingly hard to handle in school, you're far from alone. This is an excerpt from this book. Leonardo da Vinci, for one, would be right there beside you. For all his great accomplishments in art, invention, and astronomy, he was hopeless with fractions. Now that's interesting to me, okay? So right now, by the end of this video, you're going to be better at fractions than Leonardo da Vinci was, okay? And if you can be better than Leonardo da Vinci with fractions with one thing, why not two things? And if two things, why not four things, right? One little step at a time, there's no reason you can't start thinking of yourself differently and open yourself up to a new life. His notebooks reveal a man who was clumsy whenever he multiplied or divided them. And that's not even the harder one. The thing that trips people up, students, is addition and subtraction, but we'll talk about that in a second. He found it impossible to believe, for instance, that dividing something by a fraction of one, such as 2/3, would make the number bigger. We'll go over why that's the case. Da Vinci would certainly have struggled with your education. According to the school curriculum in the US, students are supposed to be able to deal with fractions by the age of 12 or 13, and should be able to, for instance, put 1/2, 5/9, and 2/7 in ascending order of size. Can you do it? Most people can. Most 12 and 13-year-olds can't. Well, the truth is, like we saw above, most people stop learning math at 12 and 13. So that's pretty much everyone. Here's another one. Which of 1, 2, 19, or 21 is closest to the sum of 12/13 and 7/8? Well, you need to be able to add these. 3/4, 75% of 12 and 13-year-old students in the US got that wrong. Okay, so what is this? We're going to go to the canvas. I'm going to show you some things about this. But first, I'm going to show you a few images. This is for memory purposes. This is so you don't forget. Meet Addie, okay? I want you to notice something about Addie. Her eyes are squinted, and she's got this smile on. Very happy. We call her Addie because this is for adding and subtracting fractions. So I want you to remember this face. Great way to remember a face. I want you to vividly notice some details about it. Notice three details. I'll start. Addie is blushing under her squinted eyes. Her hair is shining, and you can see her teeth as she's smiling. Okay. If I vividly focus on those details for a few seconds, it will be easy to remember. And it's a face, so naturally it's easy to remember. That's why I chose it. All right, this is Multi the robot. We call him Multi because you guessed it, he's going to multiply fractions, multiply and divide. So notice Multi's visor. His eye is a flat line and his mouth is a flat line. That's going to be important in a moment. And this is the disk of division. Notice it's a giant button with a crosshatch. So imagine the texture. It's this kind of grained wood that's made smooth. Imagine the feeling of the cloth on the cross stitch. Hold the disc in your imaginary hand. Give yourself a vivid experience of this thing. Knock on Multi's head, hear the steel, ding, 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 right? You can feel that this is glass and this is metal. Make this vivid for yourself so you don't forget these pictures because we're going to move over to here. Actually, let me get rid of my face so it's not a distraction as we work on the board. Okay. Give me a second here to queue up my tablet. There we go. Virtual tablet. Okay, is it tracking? Yes, we got our drawing app open. All right. So let's start with small numbers so you can see this. Let's do Addie. This is the drawing graph for Addie. Remember her squinty eyes and her smiley face? Well, this is for adding and subtracting fractions, okay? Addie. If I have 1/2 plus 3/7, the pattern on Addie's face is the secret to how we operate these, okay? I'm going to cross multiply. That's this. 1 times 7, 7, plus 3 times 2, which is 6. And then the smiley face here. Do you see Addie's face in here now? 2 times 7 is 14. So I have 6 plus 7 over 14. I get my numerator by cross multiplying and adding the cross products. What is a cross product? The product of a cross multiplication, right? I'm just using fancy terminology out of habit. So 7 plus 6 is 13, and my denominator is 14. That's it. That's how you add a fraction. Now, the reason we're doing this is because the word denominator, so when we talk about common denominators, what does that mean? It's never really introduced in a way that makes sense. And I think the best way to introduce it is to talk about money. Let's say you have a penny, 1 cent, a nickel, 5 cents, and a quarter, 25 cents. You want to add these three up. If I add this coin and this coin and this coin, do I say it equals 3 because there are 3 coins? No. Each of these has a value. And the value in money in monetary terms can be called a denomination. Notice denomination comes from the same root word as denominator, which is this bottom number in the fraction, right? It comes from the Latin verb denominare, which means to name. To name. And to name in a very specific way, to name in reference to the value. When I say 25 cents, the word cent references 100, just like the word century, and it means one piece out of 100. So if I were to write this in terms of a fraction, it would be 20. Oh, I just lost my connection. There we go. It would be 25 cents. Let me clear this board. When I say a quarter, I'm saying 25 cents out of 100. Now, if I want to add that to a nickel, 5 out of 100, notice something. The denominators, denominare, denomination, right? The name of the value is the same. That's what we mean by common denominators. Now that these are referencing the same value, we're talking in the same language. I can add these pieces up. So if I add 25 cents to 5 cents, sure enough, that's 30 cents. But 30 cents means 30 pieces out of a possible 100, which are in a dollar, right? $1. So that's what common denominator means. And I need to make sure the denominators are the same so that I can talk. We can add the same kind of thing and know what we're talking about. So let's try another one. 5/7 minus 3/5. All right, I need a common denominator. Well, how do I do that? Well, one way I could do it is, since I know I'm going to multiply these, 7 times 5 is going to be the denominator. If I multiply this fraction, the whole thing, by 7 over 7, right? Because 7 divided by 7 is 1. And multiplying anything by 1 doesn't change it, so that works. Well, multiplying this by times 7 over 7 would make the bottom denominator 35, and it would make the numerator 21, right? Well, that's exactly what I'm doing when I cross multiply with Addy, with the i's. That's what this cross multiplication does. It automatically handles the issue of the common denominator. It's just doing it more directly and taking less steps to do it. And that's great because in math, the more steps you take, the more opportunities for an error to be made. So let's say 3/7 plus 4/3. Actually, let's do a subtraction. Let's subtract this out. Oh God, that's an ugly minus sign. Let's try again. 3/7 minus 4/3. Well, I remember Addie's face. She's going to tell me how. Remember, see, squinty eyes, smiley face. And then a simple drawing, we're saying these are the squinty eyes and there's a smiley face. So to get my numerator, I multiply 3 times 3 is 9, minus 4 times 7 is 28, over 7 times 3, 21. And that's it. So that's how you add and subtract fractions. Now, how do I multiply fractions? Multiply, I look to multi, and I think I said it wrong either. I said that this handles multiplication and division. I didn't mean that. Multi handles only multiplication, and the disk of division is what we use for division. And look at multi, just two straight lines. So if you have 1/2 times 3/5, multi says just do two straight lines. To get my numerator, I multiply this way, 3. To get my denominator, I multiply this way, 2 5s or 10. That's it. Multi will help you multiply just straight across. And then if I use the disk of division, remember there's a crosshatch. The disk of division was like this. I had a crosshatch in the middle. And that just means like 2/3. If I want to divide by 1/4, to get my numerator, I multiply these two. 2 times 4 is 8. And I put that over my denominator, 3. So that's how you operate the fractions. And that's all you need to know, this simple pattern. All right, so if you have enjoyed this video, if you got something out of this at this point, if you practice those patterns, adding, multi, and the disk of division, you will be more proficient with fractions than Leonardo da Vinci was. And it might seem like too easy a victory. It may seem interesting to learn about fractions, but you think, that doesn't mean I'm a genius like Leonardo da Vinci. Well, maybe not all at once, but it does mean you can do one thing better. And like I said, if you've got one square, you could get two squares, and there's no reason you can't build a tapestry. If you would like to unlock your natural math genius, I am currently looking for people who might benefit from a 6-month coaching I do. It's a 6-month program to completely rewire your brain. Okay, we start with addition, mental addition and subtraction, and we go 6 months. It's just 5 to 10 minutes a day. And that's a very important part of the program. I want you using Kaizen in a way that really gives you the aggregation of marginal gains, that amazing power of 1% fun, enjoyable, easy daily improvement that compounds over time. Over those 6 months, we start you at the most basic arithmetic, and you finish with the ability to do everything in the OpenStax algebra and trig college level textbook, right? Everything pre-calculus and a little bit even of basic differential calculus mentally. In one line, you don't need a calculator. It'll be comfortable, it'll be fun, and you will have a completely different self-image, a completely new world of possibilities opened up to you. But this program requires a few things, and it would be best if we got on a call for me to determine that. One is I really need to screen for who I work with, where you're at in life. I don't work with children at this time. I'm looking for adult learners, and I'm looking for adult learners who are motivated and have very specific interests in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or some economics programs, things like that. But I need to know that you are committed and this is very meaningful to you because I give you a lot of my time in this program. I'm very invested in people I work with to see that transformation and to see their life changed. So if you're interested in that, I want you to comment call on this video. I hope you enjoyed your time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this life-changing knowledge with you. It changed my life, and I really enjoy helping other people explore how it can change theirs. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. All right, so now that you have those pieces of the puzzle, now that you're familiar with addy, multi, and the disk of division, uh, that's, that's so silly. I want to talk about how to do these problems that stumped people in this book. So let's talk about this first one. If you wanted to put fractions in ascending order, right, largest to smallest, you would need to know how to subtract fractions, which now you do, thanks to our friend Addie here, right? So let's put 1/2, 5/9, and 2/7 up on the board. Get rid of my face again. 1/2, 5/9, 2/7. I just need to re-engage my virtual tablet. Okay. Let's start with the first two. 1/2 minus 5/9. Now, why am I subtracting? Well, if you think about a bank account, since we were talking about money, right? If the bank account, quote unquote, if the value, if there's enough money in here, 1/2, if I subtract 5/9 out of it, the sum should come out positive. If it comes out negative, I know that I overdrew my account, which means this must be bigger than this by definition. 5/9 would be bigger than 1/2. So let's try it. Let's go visit Addie, right? This is Addie. She's squinting and smiling at us. 1 times 9 is 9 minus 5 times 2 is 10 over 2 times 9 is 18. Well, I can see this is going to come out negative, right? 9 minus 10 is negative 1 over 18. So because this came out negative, that means 5/9 is greater than 1/2. Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. 5/9 is greater than 1/2. We'll write that up in the corner. 5/9 is greater than 1/2. Now what I want to see is I want to see, what was that right over here? I need to compare 5/9 and 2/7. 5/9 minus 2/7. That's a 2. There we go, 7. So I visit Addie again, right? 5 times 7 is 35 minus 2 times 9 is 18. And that's over 9 times 7 is 63. Well, I can see 18 will come out of 35. So 5/9 must be bigger than 2/7. Now I need to see which is bigger between 1/2 and 2/7. So if I have 1/2 minus 2 out of 7, and I can already kind of see just by intuition, right? Because half of 7 would be 3.5, and this is smaller than that. So it's probably going to work. But just for the sake of practice, we'll go visit Addie again, right? Visit Addie. 1 times 7 is 7, minus 2 times 2 is 4. I couldn't read that on my tablet, guys. I didn't just forget what 2 times 2 is. But you know what? In my channel, I don't want you thinking like that. It's okay to make mistakes and forget. It doesn't mean anything about you. 2 times 7 is 14. So 7 minus 4 will work. That's 3 over 14. So yeah, 1/2 is bigger than 2/7. And so 5/9 is bigger than 1/2, which is bigger than 2/7. So if you know how to subtract fractions with Addie, you know how to do this problem that stumps most people. Or what about this one? Which of these, 1, 2, 19, or 21, is closest to the sum of these two? Well, first you have to add them, right? 12 over 13 and 7 over 8. So 12 over 13 plus 7 over 8. That would give me the sum. So 12/8. Now, if you're not practiced mentally with mental math, there's two things I want you to notice here. One is I can split this, 10 plus 2, and I can say, okay, 8 tens are 80, and 2 8s are 16, so together that must be 96. Okay? That's an easy way to do that. And then 13 times 7, I could split the 13, 10 plus 3. We could say 7 times 10 is 70. 7 times 3 is 21. This must be over, oh, excuse me, 1 over 13 times 8. Well, I already have 13 split here, so now I can just say 80 and 24. So I need 104. So 96 plus 91 over 104. Well, I can split these, right? 90 and 90 is 180, and 6 and 1 is 7. So this must be 187 over 104. Now, which of those numbers is closest to 187 over 104? Well, if you want to do this really properly, this is a division problem. 187 divided by 104. Now, this is called flag division. I'm going to show you something cool. However many digits are on my flag, it's not an exponent, this is 104, but I'm putting this up here. Now, if you don't follow exactly what I'm doing, that's okay. I'm going to have a totally different video on this training. I just want you to see what's possible when you learn some of these mental patterns, okay? However many digits I have on my flag, I move that many digits over from the decimal. That's what this line is about. And I actually use 10 to divide. So how many 10s go into 18? 1, remainder 8. Now, to get my remainder here, I just multiply the flag digit by the answer digit and subtract it out of what's left, and that'll give me my remainder. So 4 times 1 is 4. Out of this 87 is 83. 1 remainder 83. Now, 1 remainder 83, if I compare that to these numbers, well, it's much bigger than 1. It's not quite 2. It must be something like 1.8, right? It's very close to 80% of 2. So 2 is the closest number. Not going to be 19 or 20. Okay, it's bigger than 1, but it's smaller than 2. But it's closer to 2 than it is to 1 because that remainder is almost 104 again, which was our divisor. It's like 80% of that. Okay? So now you are officially smarter than Leonardo da Vinci when it comes to fractions, and you know how to solve these problems that stump most of the population. I want to congratulate you if you've made it this far in the video and mention something else.